The setup is the same as the turn in place with all four wheels on the floor, which is to say the wheelchair is sort of centered on one line of the intersecting lines, and with the other line at about the level of the rear wheel axles. The marks on the floor are at 0.5, 1, and 1.5 and 2 meters from the intersection point. So for spotting purposes, as with any wheelie, doing it from, I know Cher's able to do this, but still we're doing it from behind. The spotter strap is in place. I'm just going to center it, make sure it's passing underneath the rigidizer bar, which it wasn't set up to do. The length is okay for me, and so we're ready to go. So the instructions really should be done from in front, of course, as always. We just want Cher to get into the wheelie position and then turn herself around to face in the opposite direction. When she's done, she's free to land and then get back into the wheelie again, or just come back the way that she went in the first place. Okay, spotter on.
Okay.
Great. Excellent. So no problems there at all. That would be an advanced pass. You notice that Cher ended up a little bit displaced to one side when going in the initial direction, but pretty much back where she started originally. But for testing purposes, you might make a note of that just to give some feedback during training, but that wouldn't be enough to lower a score on the basis of that. So Cher, why don't you tell us what you would be doing as far as training somebody in this skill? And I'll spot her off.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, so the idea is getting used to, I'm just going to turn here, getting used to having your hands come on and off the hand rooms in small amounts. So often we'll start with baby steps. Some people will find using one hand at a time and making just small movements. Other people find moving both hands at the same time can be more helpful, but often it's they're kind of staggered in how you move them, and it's really small movements. Often some of the feedback that we'll get from people is they have their hands on too far and they'll lose grip. So just really light adjustments, finding your balance point, which we often refer to as that happy place first, where you can just sit there and things get pretty easy. You don't have to hold on with any great grip. Once you can get to there, then you can look at doing those movements in different directions. To take it up to kind of another level, as you can look at doing bigger turns, keeping your hands on the hand rims, or even kind of playing little games to see, okay, with one push, how far can you go? And not letting your hands go flying ever, but just doing sort of a bit of a whip turn to kind of figure out how far you can turn yourself around with one push. And both directions too. We almost always have a side. So like Lee noted, I move more when I go to my right's much more dominant than my left side. So and even when I demonstrated that without even thinking about it, I did almost all my demonstrations in that direction with my right moving, because I'm just more dominant that way. So making sure that when people are practicing, they're also practicing their other direction, because we will instinctively go to the easier side.
Yeah. And the reason why this particular skill is useful to train is that sometimes there's not a lot of space in which to turn around, and the footprint on the floor with just the two wheels there, even though the feet are sticking out farther, the footprint on the floor is smaller than it is with all four wheels on the floor. Mm-hmm. So Cher, is there ever any reason to go beyond 180 degrees?
For wicked dance moves.
Okay, why don't you show us?
I have none, no.
So the question is, when you're doing the wheelchair skills test for someone with hemiplegia, would you note not tested in all skills that include wheelies?
Ordinarily, people who have hemiplegia are not able to do a stationary wheelie, and the stationary wheelie is a prerequisite for these other skills that require the wheelie. The occasional person, sometimes a young person who's hemiplegic due to trauma, is we've certainly met people.
Someone comes to mind. Yeah.
Yes, are able to do that. Unfortunately, the wheelie isn't as much use if you only have hemiplegia, because you can certainly use your good foot and your good hand to get into the wheelie position and maintain balance with one hand, but it's difficult to sort of move yourself forward or backward or down a curb and so forth. So it's less useful. But for the vast majority of people with hemiplegia, it would just be that they would have a fail for the stationary wheelie, and therefore it would not be appropriate to test the other ones, but they still get a 0 on it. So for the total of 32 skills, they would have zeros for all of those. We don't expect as high a total score for someone with hemiplegia as we would for someone with paraplegia, for instance.
Mhm. So you might still, do the whole test, but look at, okay, what does this person need to go to their home environment safely and effectively? And
Good.
we're hesitant to say, don't test the following things for a bunch of reasons. And one of them is that as testers, we tend to underestimate people's skills.
Yeah.
So testing can open up a lot of doors for people to say, oh, I didn't know I could do that. That actually was easier than I thought. Or, oh, can I learn more about that? Then they wouldn't ask those things without having the opportunity to be tested.